Hi, my name is Brittany Diaz, and I am a student in Bonnie's class in English 1302-41. Over the course of the semester, my writing process has grown tremendously. To start off with, I really enjoyed Bonnie's method of making us create different intros and pick one to move on to our rough draft and soon our final draft. From these two, I chose the first one because I really enjoyed the visual in the beginning of the paragraph. But as you can see, it's really hard to identify the problem, which is why in the rough draft I included the problem we see is stating it, and then including the question anyways, and giving people an insight of transgenders, and the answer in the last sentence. I also included a question, a personal question. How would you feel if you just woke up the opposite sex and now had to be different than who you are now? Also, in the beginning of the paragraph, I included a visual that includes the reader putting themselves in the scenario and understanding more of transgenders since day one and how they are judged to play a specific role. Now, when I jump into the body paragraphs, I noticed that in my rough draft, I gave no introduction and then just jumped straight into my sources. And as you can see here also, I didn't know how to give credit to the author, which is why I just put it in yellow so I wouldn't forget to do it in my final draft, which I got a lot more educated and knew how to do it, which is the first and last name, title, and then the year it was published. My rough draft really does not have a lot, but when it came to my final research, I noticed myself a lot more confident in writing. And I also noticed that I gave a lot more introductions to the paragraphs, which really helped my readers know what the paragraph was going to talk about. Like, for example, this one. Sex and gender are two completely different things according to psychologists. And then I did jump into a site, but only to go back to my first sentence. Because sex and gender are different things, I included what sex was, which is a person's biological sex, and gender. Gender refers to a social presentation of sex, while sex, including the existence of penises and vaginas, which is a female organ. After that, I gave credit, but I really did something different this time, which was not include a run-on paragraph. So I jumped to the second paragraph, which was still from the first source, as you can see here, the credits, and I also still introduced it differently because there were different quotes and different subjects. So I organized the paragraphs with the sources differently. And then I jumped into a different source, introducing the paragraphs differently. And for the first one, it was a controversial source, which really helped my research. For example, here, I gave a personal story that came in the source. The tragic story of she killed herself after her parents attempted to force her to live as a boy. Brings this phenomenon into tragic focus. So I explain here. If this girl killed herself for being forced to live a way she did not want to, that should be a sign that people should stop trying to force control a person's way of life with psychologist therapy sessions and told what gender is right and wrong from the assigned sex. But instead allow them to live the life they want with acceptance. So I just backed it up with my argument and my explanations, which really does make a difference to how you are going to mold the quotes in your research. Quotes. After that, In the very end, after including all my sources, I jumped into here. I conducted documentation analysis, which was my primary research, which I got from YouTube, and I organized this by including the person's name after the transition. So Chris was born a female and was named Julia before being named Chris. I included the age. At age 12, she was given drugs to stop the puberty. And then I gave an insight about them. Kai was a boy who transitioned into a girl who was now named Kyla. By any chance, this one did not have an age in the YouTube video. And then after these people in the documentation analysis, I included a raw primary, which was a person who I was following on Instagram and who later on met up with me, and I asked him some personal questions due to my research question. Dane is an 18-year-old transgender who was born a boy and transitioned to a girl at age 17. I asked, "Do you believe transgenderism is a mental illness or a choice?" Dane answered. Basically, the whole paragraph, I go back and forth saying I asked and how he answered. I did not include a graph. But it turned out pretty organized. After that, in this paragraph, was one of the paragraphs that I included my actual answer to the whole essay. And after that, I gave a conclusion, but Bonnie told me not to just say, we need to be more aware. No, you need to explain how are you going to apply that to society. Which is why I said we need to raise awareness on transgender people and train better psychologists into being more educated on what to say rather than to discriminate an individual with more considerate feelings. We need more psychologists and counselors to provide more therapy for transgender people who face discrimination. Then I talk about how words can really affect a person and how a person should think more before they speak than just talking out of their mouths. Then when it came to citing, believe it or not, for the first time in the semester, I learned how to cite, which really did help me and is later on going to help me a lot. It was really easy. It took less than 5 or less than 3 minutes, honestly. And I honestly never knew it could be so helpful. Now, when it came to my feedback process development, when it came to me giving more feedback to my peers, I really looked for a clear intro and trying to find what the question is in their paragraph, their answer, and the organization of paragraphs. I know some people just jump straight into it, and like I said, that is not a good way of having a strong, buildable essay. I really look for the conclusion, and I look for them providing more of an action than a saying. When it came to my feedback from my peers, I was really surprised that I did not get anything bad. It says here, after reading your starting sentences for your sources, I generally think they're strong. This one says, my honest opinion is that this paragraph has a clear intro. And when it came to my professor, she talked about how I could work more with stating my answer, which I did include here. So is transgenderism a mental illness? Which is just a small paragraph of me getting to the point, and then I go, the answer is no. And then explaining, although many psychologists interpret it differently, the American Psychology Association has made a clear answer. Calling it a mental illness may make the transgender individual feel like there is something terribly wrong with them and putting them under stress. I wanted feedback on how to fix my primary research information, but Bonnie said that there really is no way. She said she said to organize it in different ways, which I did. Which you can see it goes from the past to the future to how she feels now. In the beginning, Jane talks about how she was not as confident. She talked here. I started having body dysphoria my freshman year, and I feel more confident now. I still have my days, but I am feeling better. She claims her mental health is way better than where she was 2 years ago, and that the stress is still there, but she is not where she was. She is not where she was 2 years ago. So you can really see a difference in confidence when she speaks highly of herself now. Now, when I talk about writing with a purpose, I identified a purpose which was, in my conclusion, to raise awareness on transgender people and train better psychologists into being more educated on what to say rather than to discriminate an individual with more considerate feelings. Nowadays, psychologists have their different mindsets and include their opinions because all psychologists are trained differently, and that really affects the child on what psychologists they get, which can cause the child to be under stress, and that is why most transgender kids are depressed and are in high suicidal rates. My audience is psychologists, and it is also parents, which is why my project was a on parent guide on a way to help their transgender child. Psychologists need to be guided in the right direction and learn how to deal with transgenders because they are the cause of mental health of an individual and are known to rescue a person when seeking medical assistance, and because transgenders need help from discrimination from them too. There's health consequences. So my whole essay is directed to parents, and it is directed to psychologists. So it really does make a difference in how I am molding it for their use. This society can do a lot of damage to an individual if not treated right. That is a role that a psychiatrist should stop focusing on and focus on a person to behave their assigned gender, giving the trauma themselves. It really did make a difference in how I am going to change the wording and the purpose of my essay so I can get through to them and explain how psychologists are really affecting the mental health and causing distress and depression of a child. A parent also has a lot to do with the child because they're the ones that are sending their children to the psychiatrist, telling them that something is wrong with them, which is a lot more confusing to transgenders since they already are confused themselves. Like it says here, this may cause depression and puts them in a high risk for suicide. Transgenderism is a choice, and people choose this by the type of environment that they are most connected to. Transgenders need to be loved, and this needs to change. Now, how will I use what I learned in the future? Well, to start off with, I really did not know how to cite my sources. I honestly didn't, so I know that now I'm going to use the website I was given. I believe it was called OWL, and I know that honestly that's something I would stress with a lot and ask for help, and now I know that I could do it by myself. I also know that Bonnie let me know that the better sources end with .org, .org or .edu. I also am going to use more visuals in the beginning of my paragraphs because I know that that was something strong that I got told was a good hook. Personal questions in the beginning of the paragraph, something I'm going to keep on doing, and introducing my paragraphs. Other than that, my essay is something I'm really proud of, something I hope to get through to parents and psychiatrists. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.